like he's in the fucking room with us right now.
It is. Yeah, very true. I do love that one. Well, I guess, yeah, that can kind of lead us into, what we're trying to hear. Are you ready to start? You ready to
I'm
hop
ready
in?
to start. I'm ready to start fucking talking.
Okay. Ladies and gents, welcome back to Articulate. Today, we have Eva Lin Feindt. How you doing, Eva Lin?
Hi.
Hi.
Should I look at the camera?
You
Is
can
that allowed?
give a little wave, yeah.
Hello. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. And I'm so excited for this podcast episode because what's interesting is, like, I always ask people, like, what they want to talk about or, like, what their hobbies are, what they're interested in. And you're like, I have a program
Yes.
that I think everybody should get into. And I would love to come on and just really tell people how to live their life.
Yes.
Yes.
100%.
100%. Okay, so this kind of started by you and I. We actually just, like, random. It was almost like the first time we really talked at after class. We went out to the bar and we just had like a really in-depth conversation about emotion.
We did.
Just like randomly.
But it was like in December, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a while ago.
Yeah.
But that was still like the first time I feel like we really talked. I mean,
yeah, I've talked for like a more extended period of time about like our feelings.
Right. Yeah. It was just got really deep and heavy, but it was like really good. You know what I mean? It felt very therapeutic.
I totally agree.
Right. So we're planning on doing something like relationship based or like emotion based. And so, yeah, and then you unveiled this plan.
Yes.
So let's do a little rundown. What is the program?
Okay.
And where did it start, I guess?
Okay. So the program is something that I've been creating in my mind incubator. Essentially, it is if we lived in a cool, wacky world where everyone did exactly what I told them to do, then
for everybody to you're the dictator.
Yeah, so this is like I'm a dictator scenario.
A benevolent dictator.
A benevolent dictator, right. But some may say dictator, right. Kevin. But yeah, so where like I think that everyone from the ages of like 23 to 27-ish, they can start/enter this program. Okay. And they'll have to because it'll be mandatory. But basically they have to have 1 to 3 years where you're totally alone and you cannot like enter into any kind of romantic entanglement. So you can't go on dates. Right. You can't have like any weird like talking phases with people, like weird situationships, none of that. No, obviously like no straight relationship, not like heterosexual, like there's no straight up like straight relationship. Up. Right. Like straight up, none of that. Yeah. So you have to be alone for this amount of time, for this 1 to 3 years in like this period of like your mid-20s. And ideally, obviously in my dictator world, everyone would be able to independently live by themselves should they choose to. You have to like be able to do that for this amount of time and successfully manage your household. So it's like, so the idea of the program is like to be able to spend like these years in your mid-20s. And I say mid-20s like because I think like especially when you're like 23, like we talked about this before, it's like when you're like 23, 24, I feel like every year, just like the more that your brain develops, the more it feels like you know who you are as a person. Whereas like when you're like 20, 21, 22, like, I don't know, it still kind of feels like you're just like, God, I just need to be fucking alive right now. Yeah. So yeah, that's why I say like mid-20s. And like you're kind of just also, you're like figuring out what you want to do with your life and you're also thinking a little bit more about the future. So I think spending this time alone, like you have like, you're forced to spend this time alone to figure out what it is that you actually want for your future, what you actually want out of relationships with people in terms of romance and honestly kind of just everything. And like how those two things can successfully merge together. Right. Yeah, because I think a lot of...
Well, it's like building yourself, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, not just like what other people perceive you as or like what maybe you think society wants you to do with your life, or with relationships and like the standard edition of a relationship, It's like really take time to yourself, figure out what you like to do and just really develop that to the point where, because I mean, first of all, I mean, relationships aren't always guaranteed either. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it's like worst case scenario for some people, you're just going to be alone for the rest of your life. And you should be able to accept that without feeling weird about it. You know what I mean?
And like just being like the longest amount of time that you're going to spend with a person, like that person is yourself. So like you have to kind of be able to fucking live with yourself.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to curse?
Yeah.
Okay. You have to be able to like fucking live with yourself.
Yeah.
Or else you're just kind of, I don't know. I say all of this like as if I'm some super smart person, but I'm actually just a stupid, dumb bitch idiot.
Yeah. Maybe not that far, but all right.
But like, I don't know. The development of this program was because, I mean, I was single and alone for like...
This program was made out of spite.
Yeah.
It's a spite program.
Yeah. Actually, though. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know, because, again, this is like also to caveat, I've like barely dated any people. I've had one official relationship.
Right.
But it ended poorly, and I thought about like love and like relationships for a lot after it.
Right.
But yeah, and then when I moved to Philly, I was here for like, I mean, I've been here for like a year and a half, pretty much, and I've lived by myself the entire time.
Okay.
And have just like been figuring that out. And so I feel like a lot of that time was also spent like trying to figure out how to be alone, because I used to think that I always liked being alone because just like my environment like was kind of chaotic. So it was like being alone was like a refuge. But then as like I became an adult, it's like it's not really used for that way anymore, because like the environment that I was in like wasn't the same anymore, if that makes sense. So then it's like actually learning like how to be alone. Right. If any of that made sense.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel that, because I think there is like a point where, so I lived alone only once in my life, and it was the worst period of my life, but also like the best period of my life, because like I definitely like living alone is different than like actually living alone is different than like feeling like you're alone. You know what I mean?
For sure.
So I definitely get what you mean, where it feels like, you know, living with roommates that you're like, okay, I have to like, you know, I can't leave. Like your room is your sanctuary, but it's like still to be in your own space and like not have people. It's very different. It, like living alone taught me basically it's just your thoughts and the walls.
It really is.
It's literally just your thoughts.
And it's nothing else.
And it's nothing else.
And if you can't handle that, well, I mean, the thing is like it's hard to handle that, because I feel like also as we grow up and like as we're in this period of our life, it's like you are developing to the point where it's like, I don't know. Do you feel this way? Sometimes I'm thinking thoughts and I'm like, I can't believe I have like thoughts in my brain. Like this is crazy. I'm like, this is like the first time I've ever thought a real thought. And like what we talked about on Thursday too, where it's like, it feels like now what we think, like just as we grow older, it's like actually like forming who we are as people.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And like you can like articulate kind of who you are as a person.
Yeah.
Which is like semi-terrifying, as opposed to like when you're a teenager, like thoughts come and go, but like you're so malleable and like anything, like you can change like a lot easier and everything. But I feel like now being alone with your thoughts is kind of like, it almost feels like very like at like a macro level. It's like, who am I as a person? Like, what am I doing in the universe and like in the world? And like, what am I here to do? And like, what am I going to do with my future? And how's are the people around me and the things around me going to play into that? And how's everything going to affect me? And how am I going to affect other people?
Yeah, I think they call this a quarter-life crisis, maybe? Is that what,
maybe, yeah.
No, but I mean, I've talked to a lot of people who are like 26 or like 27, like, oh, you haven't gone through it yet, or something like that, where you start like really, it sounds like this is the beginning of that. You know what I mean?
The program is the beginning.
The program is the beginning.
The program, on one hand, speeds up the quarter-life crisis, but also forces you to deal with it. Because if you're having a quarter-life crisis and you try and solve your problems by starting to date someone, that's not going to solve it.
Yeah, you're forming
Good
a
fucking
dependency.
luck.
Yeah. Yeah, you're forming a dependency when you should really be focused on yourself. And I mean, even one thing that you said was just like, have hobbies. Like, because like if you're in a relationship, your hobby is like going out to eat or like chilling with your partner and watching, TV or whatever. And you're not really working toward anything with that, especially if you want to be like pessimistic and think that all relationships end. So it's like maybe some people think about it like, oh, we're building a relationship, but I don't know. I think you should be building like the relationship with yourself, which is basically what the program is about.
I totally agree.
Yeah, definitely. And so like, you can be in a relationship. You know what I mean? I'm not going to knock you for being in a, fuck everybody who's in a relationship.
Fuck those guys.
You ever see a cute couple out in public and you're just like, dude, just stop. Like, what do you...
Steve, do you want to hear something terrible?
Yes.
So, yes, I would think that all the time, but now that I've entered into a nebulous, undefined romance...
Yeah. You're breaking your program. It's fine.
No, okay, listen. I'm not breaking the program because I did my time. So, it's like you're alone for a year to 3 years.
A year to 3 years.
And
you have to apply if you want to get out. And Eva Lin is the...
Yeah. So there's like going to be like an appeal court. And then you, if you're in front of me, you come to my home, I sit you down on my couch, you plead your case, and I make a decision. Yeah, so, I made a decision about myself.
You appealed.
I appealed to myself, and I was like, you know what? Sounds good.
Yeah.
Even though the fact that I can't, we call it a nebulous, undefined romance is all my fault. I don't know how telling that is. But either way.
Right.
Where was I going with this?
So I said, you ever see a couple in public? And be
yeah.
Like, yeah.
That's fucking...
What?
It's so embarrassing now. Like, that's
really?
literally me now. And it's fucking disgusting.
Yeah, you just...
It makes me want to throw myself in front of a SEPTA bus.
Damn.
I know, right?
Yeah, that's pretty harsh, but I mean, I think you should be able to congratulate yourself. Also, fuck you, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, I mean, I don't know. That's what, I think there's a comic who has like, I think it was just on a podcast. It's not even a bit really, but basically he was talking about, he's like, I miss like the days when there weren't phones because when you were out in public and you like made eye contact with somebody, you're like, oh, look at that fucking piece of shit over there. You know what I mean? But then you would like look at them again and you'd be like, all right, they're not that bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where now it's like you have your phone and you like look at people and you're like, fuck, piece of shit. And then go back,
Yeah.
But
it's all just a distraction.
It is. But in that, and it keeps you from like having that second thought, you know what I mean? Which is kind of what we're talking about. Like building on thoughts as opposed to just like having a surface level thought and then
like the first reaction.
Yeah, exactly. So like when I see a couple like that, my initial thought is like, fuck you guys for being so keep making me feel I'm alone. Like you should be. I think you're alone too. Like on the inside, I think everybody's alone on the inside. Why are you being?
It's true.
Cute right now.
Yeah.
But then my follow up thought is like, all right, they're probably happy together or whatever. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. The program was created out of many reasons, but some of them were also, I was just seeing people and I was like, I don't know, guys. I think you guys should be in the program instead of dating each other.
Yeah.
So there's that too.
Yeah.
But I think it's just like about people needing to figure themselves out.
Sure. Yeah. And again, it's like it's easy to say that like from our perspective.
Yeah.
But you don't know what they're actually like, what their relationship is like.
Yeah.
It's easy to be like, you should be in this relationship.
Yeah.
You should be in this program.
I'm obviously saying this as if I've totally figured my entire life out, which would be a big fat lie.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah. No. But it's definitely good to have that like, self-awareness and everything, right? I guess.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, let me see. I have some questions here.
Ooh, okay.
Oh yeah, so I guess like why did you specifically start forming this program?
Okay, that's a great question. First of all, I just want to say I love how we talk about this program as if it's like a legitimate thing.
Oh, we're legitimizing it right now. This is the trademark.
It's like there's going to be a website. People can go and apply and to make me the dictator of the world, so that I can force every mid-20-year-old to do this.
I think your name is Eva Lin Feindt. That like it is kind of a dictator name. I'm just throwing that out there.
That's just my Instagram handle though. My last name is pronounced Feindt.
Yeah,
you do say the N.
I know, but it could be a dictator name.
Well, if it's a dictator name, I think it's a pretty cool one.
It would be. That's what I'm saying. Is like that sounds like a benevolent dictator name.
I think so too.
Anyways, website.
Yeah. You know, it would be incredibly accessible to people.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, sorry. What was your question again?
Why did you start this?
Oh, why did I start? Okay,
yeah.
Okay. The time when I was single, and as a caveat, I say this as if it was many, many moons ago. You know.
It was literally like 3 months ago.
No, it was like literally 1 month ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, I just met this person, like, whatever. I met him yesterday.
Right.
It's fine.
Yeah, we don't have to, like, talk about it.
Yeah. But, like, you know, the thoughts are in my brain. They're fresh.
Mm-hmm.
All the alone single girl thoughts are super fresh in my brain. And so, like, when I was going through that, and, you know, I still kind of feel like I am a little bit.
Sure.
But, like, I was thinking about love, and I was, like, thinking about, I like, go on dating apps and stuff, but I just, like, kind of fucking hated it. And then just, like, the thought of, like, dating people, I was, like, no, this just sounds terrible. And I feel like sometimes I was being really harsh with myself, but also, at the same time, I kind of liked that I was, because I think ultimately I was just, like, being, like, I don't know, maybe, like, a little bit realistic with myself.
Yeah.
Like, even just in terms of, like, scheduling and, like, timing-wise, because in the other part of my life, I was, like, doing a lot of other stuff. So, for me, scheduling-wise, is, like, I don't have time to, like, go on dates with people.
Right.
Which was kind of true, because I was, like, on sets a bunch, working in class and, like, rehearsals and everything like that. And so that part was also just, like, cultivating my hobbies, right? Like, creating the life, ultimately, that I wanted to live, which I'm still doing, but it's, like, all about, okay, how do I want to feel? Where do I want to be? And, like, what do I want to be doing from 5 years from now? And I think not having to factor in any kind of romantic partner that, like, whatever, had maybe, hypothetically, if they were, like, attached to my life at that point in time, helped. Because it's, like, when you tie yourself to another person, you have to make your thoughts and your choices about your life.
They're a huge variable.
With them. Yeah. Which, I mean, not like that's a bad thing, but I also had a lot of friends who were like, I would talk about their relationships, and it kind of felt like they were going through these shifts where it was like, oh no, it doesn't seem like our futures are really lining up with what we want in terms of, like, our own career. Yeah.
And that's so hard when you still, like, love that person too, that, like, because, like you said, you're developing yourself, like, during this period of your life, and then you're looking at your partner and being like, you're cool, I love you, but you're, like, in a completely different industry. Like, you have a lot of different interests, I would say, that like keep you where you are. Whereas, like, my interests are gonna, or they move you the opposite direction. You know what I mean? Whereas my interests are gonna keep me busy doing my thing and taking time to do all my shit. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think we were just gonna talk about, like, how there's a sense of being, like, emotionally mature, like, you know, like, with relationships. One of the things that we initially talked about was, like, Ted Lasso on that first. Was on that first conversation.
I'm actually rewatching Ted Lasso right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, the thing that's great about that show, and I think it is a good sign for society in general, which is weird, but they handle relationships, like, so well. Like, they handle communication and like honesty. But one of the reason I brought this up is because you were talking about how, you know, you're in a relationship and you see different outcomes or whatever, right? But sometimes you just randomly, I don't know if it's random, but sometimes people just stop loving each other. So that's what happens to Ted. Like, his wife, remember, she, like, comes to visit with their child, and they had, like, the greatest time ever, and it was a beautiful night, and then they woke up the next morning and she was just crying.
Yeah, and she's like, I want to feel the way I felt at the beginning.
Right. Exactly. And it's just like, it just doesn't, like, I wish it would work, but it just doesn't.
Yeah.
And that's not, and when you put it like that, instead of, like, you know, having blame or, like, reasons as to why it's not working or trying to, like, figure it out, sometimes it just stops.
Yeah.
You know?
I will say though that I do not have an answer for, because that I feel like, man, I don't even know where to begin with that.
Yeah.
Well, it's not in my pay grade.
Right. But again, coming back to the point where it's like sometimes you're in a relationship and it's hard to like have a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan when literally anything can happen unless you like fully are committed to somebody, which it takes time, takes a lot of time. And like that's not a bad thing. Like Ted and his wife had, you know, like they had a relationship, they had a beautiful relationship, they had a kid, and you know they did the whole thing together. But like you really do have to feel that being 24 is like we're so like volatile.
I know.
Right now, you know what I mean? Our lives are so
agreed.
volatile. So it's like it always baffles me how people feel so settled in a relationship at this age.
I agree. It's like you can change so much, and especially like in this decade, you can like, I think people need to think about their lives on like such a huge expansive scale where it's like being in your 20s is great, and I feel like a lot of people place a lot of, you know, gold star like best decade or whatever on this time, but I'm also like, yeah, but just like think about how long you're gonna be alive, and it's like crazy to think that you wouldn't change, you know? And I think that's really scary. And which is like totally fine. It is scary, but I also think that it can be scary and like exciting.
For sure.
But the thing with that is also like, you know, if you change, it's like the people, you know, like who have maybe been dating since like they were in their early 20s or like since they were teenagers or something, it's like it's hard to be like, well, what if you change and you both change and then it's just like
doesn't
not
work
there anymore. Yeah, because that's really sad too.
It is really sad.
But like, I don't know, your life is so long. You can do so many things.
I wanted to like talk about like how important age is, like in this sense too, because I feel like up until we were talking about this the other day, I was like when I was 23, I felt like I was 50 years old, like and had lived an entire life. But now I'm like 24, and I feel like I'm at the beginning of something again. And I feel a lot more fresh and like kind of ready to go. But the difference,
those frontal lobes, man.
They finally developed. I'm
serious.
They're
no,
it
like
is. That's
my final form.
I told you this, but like the last 5 years, your brain stops developing when you're 26, and the last 5 years is really when emotional control starts to develop. And I think that is obviously a huge part of who we are as people, but obviously how we perceive the world and life as well. So when you're 23 or below, and it feels like you've been doing things for so long, it's also hard to put in perspective how long life actually is, because you're like right in front of me now, like my life is like a fraction of 23. You know what I mean? And so then you hit 24. So it's like when you're 23, your life is like, oh, I'm 23 out of 23. When you hit 24, you're like 24 out of 75 maybe. You know what I mean? And start to like look at it a lot more long term, and I'm sure that increases as you get older as well too. And, probably gets real scary down the line, but
I know, I love how we're talking about this as if we've like lived 500 years on this planet. We're literally like fucking 24 years old.
I know. Well, we were talking about this too. I feel like they should have like a class on like age and how like age affects people. People's perceptions, because
and how also people shouldn't be afraid to age, because I think there's like a huge fear, I mean especially with women too, of like aging,
right?
And I'm like, I mean there's so many things that go into it, I can't even begin to unpack all of that, but like I don't think we need to be afraid of it, but I think we're always told to be afraid of it, and everyone too.
I think the scary part is not being able to do what you want to do anymore, to me. And like again, also people, I think another scary part is if you're not comfortable with yourself, you no matter how you look at death, you're doing it alone. Like you're going to die alone. It's a quote from Donnie Darko. Every living creature on this earth dies alone.
He's not wrong.
He's not wrong. But it's really sad. But like that's, you know, you have to be, I think part of, if you look at it, death is almost a transition. You know what I mean? Whether you think it's transitioning just into blackness or transitioning into some afterlife or transitioning into, car change. I don't know. But if you're comfortable with yourself, if you are really have developed yourself to the point where you feel comfortable changing, like you're saying, it can be scary, but it can also be really exciting. Looking at it at like, okay, now I'm going into my 30s. At least I'm comfortable with who I am and I know who I am.
Yeah.
And now I can like work different angles of that as a 30-year-old and beyond, and so on and so forth. And death is, this is, why are we talking? Okay.
Whoa.
Yeah, but like death is just like, all right, I need to go into this myself and I need to be comfortable, and it's like scary. Yeah, real scary. Yeah. You ever think about death before?
I have, but I don't like to talk about it.
I know. I asked Q-Son on the pod last time. I was like, are you afraid of getting old? And I just did it like as a joke. I was like, are you afraid to get old? And he's just like, no. And I was like,
that's good.
Am. Yeah, no, that's good, but
tell Q-Son to do the program.
Yeah.
Q-Son, if you're watching, I'm coming for you.
But yeah, that's actually one of the things. I said how much age plays a factor in relationships. And it's like you were saying, is like at this point, a lot.
Yeah.
Factors into it a lot.
Yeah, I think so too. And like even just the whole figuring out what it is that you like finding out kind of what paths you want to go on. And I think that's just thinking about, taking relationships out of it, like career too, and like just lifestyle too, kind of. Like I think about, for me personally, never really in my life did I like give an inclination that I wanted to be an actor to people. Did I know that I wanted to be one? Yes. But like in college, I didn't do any of that or go out for any of that, or like in high school or anything. But yeah, I mean, that also wasn't that long ago. And like I've been acting for like a year and a half now. If you told me 2 years ago that I would like be doing this, I'd be like, no, that's crazy. But now it's like such a big part of my life, and it's affecting a lot of choices that I'm making. Like, where am I going to move next?
Yeah.
Like, where am I trying to live in, like by the end of this year or whatever?
Yeah.
Like, what is my life going to look like in terms of just everything, like lifestyle, like, being on set for longer periods of time, financially, because it's kind of more freelance-y if you think about it in that way.
Right. Highly volatile.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just
and that just came within this past year and a half.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's the thing, it's like, for me, it was like I followed like the thing that I wanted to do and like just kept going and going and going. But then so like that helped me make, kind of form this idea of like how my future is going to look without all of that. But then like I met someone on set and
who's like a new part, is part of this new change that you're excited about.
Exactly. So it's kind of like, I don't know, like it was very exciting for me because I was like, I'm already following this path that I feel really good about, and I'm just gonna like keep going. And like we both understand each other because he's also a filmmaker and like is also in bands. So it's like also like artistically, just like, you understand that there's like an independent life that you have and that you're trying to cultivate, especially as an artist. It's like, because you don't ever just like want to let your craft sit, right? You just like want to keep making it better and, keep going and like keep auditioning, keep making films, whatever, all of that jazz. So it's like, it was nice to like actually be like upfront, like, yes, this is my life, because like this is how you met me. Doing something that was just like me living my life.
Yeah. So. And I feel like you can set more realistic standards now that you've had this period of, self-defining yourself.
My program.
Yeah, your program. Self-defining yourself. The program. And so like going into a new relationship now after, thinking about all these things, realizing, having actual thoughts.
Yeah, literally.
Then you can, kind of set that up at the forefront of the relationship. Yeah. And so, again, not having expectations or having an expectation of just like that things might change, is really, really important going into that.
And honestly, I think a lot of that does just boil down to like communication because, obviously not everyone is like, people work 9 to 5s. Like,
yeah.
I work a fucking 9 to 5.
Yeah.
I just do stuff after it too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's just like being honest and like upfront about what it is that you want and like what it is you think you could like handle.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think a lot of people get into relationships and I don't know, it's like a whole range, you know? Like, I think a lot of people get into relationships and they kind of think that it's going to fix all their problems, which is not. They get into them and like maybe think the way that they see it in society or whatever is how they should follow it, where it's like you get into a relationship, you date for a few years, move in, get married, have kids, and then like you go and live your perfect suburban life. Like, yeah. And I just think that, you know, people are different and like if you, you know, communicate honestly and are like, hey, I think I need X amount of time by myself. So it's not like anything on you, but like, don't talk to me.
Yeah.
Like if I don't text you back,
right.
I'm not mad at you.
Right.
I'm just like doing other stuff.
And a part of that is not feeling guilty about not texting that person
exactly.
back and having that mutual understanding. Like that's what happens in Ted Lasso too between Keely and Roy, where she just like they like listen, like I love you, but I need my alone time, and I feel like that's another part of the program, right? Like literally like developing some, it's a great program.
I agree.
Yeah, but like developing a value for alone time.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have that value, then like you're like we said, I mean, the whole thing is that you go through the rest of your life alone.
Yeah.
In your head, basically.
Yeah.
The only person that you have to live with for the rest of your life is yourself, and so being able to value that, and then honestly being able to communicate that in a relationship.
Yeah.
How important that value is to you as well.
Yeah.
Is very, very important. So yeah, I mean, this program is fucking killing it, dude.
Whoever came up with this program is super smart and not at all drunk out of her mind.
Yeah, no, it's a good program. Yeah, I think the one of the last few things. I did write down RuPaul's quote. If you can't love yourself, how the hell you gonna love somebody else, baby?
Exactly.
Yeah, but the last thing I did want to ask about, since we were kind of touched on it a bit, was how you think that acting has affected your emotions and emotional relationships.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I feel like I could talk about this forever.
I know, this should have been the whole thing, right?
I know, what the hell?
Because I guess I'll start it out a little bit, but
great.
Because like I said, when you start developing your emotional capacities at the last 5 years of your life, and when I was that's 26. When I was 21, I was like very, very like emotionally volatile and just like high anxiety, high stress, and just like all over the place, and I couldn't control it. And then I'd go home and like cry a lot, and then but here's the thing, and then I would also, because how volatile it was, I'm like, listen, if I'm allowing, and that's like a term that I use loosely, like if I'm allowing myself to get this, because it's not like a choice, but you just get this volatile. If I'm allowing myself to get this low or this stress or this sad, then I'm going to allow myself to get very high as well. And not just high, but like high in the sense of like, oh, I'm going to enjoy my, if I'm going out to drink, I'm going to get drunk and like have a good time. Or, if I'm doing something fun, I'm going to do what I can to accentuate that. So that way, it kind of balances out.
It's kind of like a life of extremes.
A life of extremes.
Oh.
Quite very much so. But now that I've been kind of like working on sort of the emotional part of acting a little bit, is like, oh, I can channel these whenever I want. And so if I can channel these emotions when I want, then it might help me when I should be less emotional in situations. You know what I mean? So it's like if I feel like it's a necessity to release like some, sadness in you sometimes, or
for sure.
joy or just high emotions. So if you can like have it like a faucet and like release it when you want to, then I feel like it's less likely to just come out of you in a social setting.
Yeah, like kind of less likely to control you.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I mean, I totally agree with that. I think like having I don't want to say like emotional outlet, because then I feel like, for me at least, it seems like I'm putting all of my weight on having emotions on acting, which isn't true.
Right. I mean, this applies in like regular everyday life as well.
Yeah. But God, I feel my face getting so red. This is great. Perfect. It's like 2:30 p.m.
Don't tell them.
Oh shit.
No, it's like 6 p.m. On a Saturday night. We're
fine. But yeah, I think for me, I mean, just like being able to, I've always been like a very emotional person since I was young.
Oh, really? I couldn't tell.
Yes, I know, it's crazy, right? Yeah, and like, it was never seen as a good thing, you know? And so like, a lot of emotions just like lived in me. And like you said, it was like I couldn't control them, but they came out of me in just like, you know, pretty bad ways.
I punched a couple doors. You're telling me.
Yeah. And yeah. No, I've been there before too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, that's also just like, you know, being a kid is fucking hard.
True. So true.
And I totally get that.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know, being a little emotional kid is just like also the worst. Your environment, when it's not great and you're an emotional little twerp, you're just going to suffer.
Right.
So that's kind of what happened to me. And I feel like a lot of stuff I'm still, you know, as I grow up and I deal with it kind of more like, you know, with like therapy and talking it out and a lot of journaling and just like kind of understanding myself more and like who I am as a person. I think having acting and like being able to, I don't want to say work through those emotions necessarily like with acting, but I just kind of think like really letting myself and like allowing myself to feel the full extent of what I feel and like what I've always felt is like very, very freeing to me. And I think so much of my acting is like, or not my acting, like a lot of acting for me is like, especially with like the highly emotional stuff, is like very, very cathartic for me. Yeah, and I think it's kind of like I've done a few projects that have like hit pretty close to me and like have still felt like very personal to me. And it's like I've gotten really like, even when we cut and stuff like that, like I still feel so like, because like
gut wrenched.
Yeah, like I know where I'm pulling the emotions from and stuff, and like it still is like coming from like so deep inside of me, and like even when we call cut, like I'm still so deep inside of it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like kind of figuring out how to be like, okay, that wasn't really real, but you kind of allowed yourself to feel this crazy thing that you've sort of always felt a little bit, but like to be able to control it and then come out of it and be like, okay, this is your life now. Like, like when I was on that like I did when I was on that Kansas set, it was like real intense. And like there were some scenes, even just like, because I mean the subject matter was about like sexual assault. So there was some, and it's all about like after it happens. So you know, there's like a scene with like my roommate, and there's just like a lot of alone nonverbal stuff. And then like I try hooking up with someone after, and like in between when they were setting up shots and stuff, I was just like, I was like, I need to, like ran out of the house. I was like, and like just laid on the sidewalk. It was like 20 degrees outside.
Ground yourself a little bit.
Yeah, because I was like, I need to remember that this is like not me.
Right, disassociate from it a bit.
Yeah, but it was like really, really interesting because I was like, I mean, the fact that I'm feeling like so heavily
Isn't that crazy?
is like good,
Yeah.
Because it's like, you know, our whole thing, it's like, it's not fake.
Right.
And I was like, I don't feel like it's fake.
Yeah.
But then after I like called my sister and like we talked about life, and I was like, I remember talking to my therapist after, and I was like, I feel like I kind of got more of a grasp on like what's real. It was just really weird. And it was like kind of one of the first times I'd like really understood like what was happening. And I was like, this is not real, but I'm feeling a lot of things. But it's kind of cool that I can control it for this environment.
Right.
Because it's such an intense feeling. And then I can still kind of come out of it and be like, this is kind of what I need from the people around me to make me, Eva Lin, not this character, feel like myself again.
Yeah.
But then after, like when I came back, I was like, I feel really good. Like I feel so like like liberated.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was like so cool. And I don't know, I think like as I've done more and more, like, I mean, you know me, I fucking love my highly emotional, volatile shit.
Yeah.
I'm like, comedy? No. Romance? No. I want to fucking scream and cry. Like, like that stuff for me is just like, so much of it is just like, these are feelings that I've been holding on to for 15 years. How can I change them a little bit to, you know, fit whatever the scene or the project requires, but still just let it fucking come out of me with a full force intensity.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I think that's fun because I'm also like, obviously still working on myself and stuff, but like have become more mature and like more, you know, emotionally grounded where I can be like, after that's done, okay, here's me, this is my life as a person. You know, I'm not in whatever environment and like anymore. I can take care of myself. I like know what to do to make myself feel taken care of.
Yeah.
I know who I can talk to. I know what I can do, and like it'll be kind of just like it'll be okay.
Yeah. I think that's so important. There's two things I wanted to say. One was I'll actually come back to that. Was my experience like with the acting and like finding that. But the first thing is just kind of like a reference to there's a show called Invincible, and basically there's like a Superman type of character, but he has like a human son, or kind of. I guess he's not human, but it doesn't matter. Anyways, so he's been alive for so long, and there's a lot of quotes that I've heard in song quotes, but also this specifically, there's a scene where basically he's Superman, but he's like evil. It's fine. We don't have to like talk about it, but he has a wife, right? And then he has this kid who's in a baseball game.
Okay.
And for him, he's been alive for years and years and years. You know, for a while, like infinity, basically. Not really, but you know, like hundreds and hundreds of years. But the thing is that a lot of people say that the quote that I'm referring to is that as you get older, a lot of times your emotions become less. They just become less. You know what I mean? And you start to. Rivers Cuomo has this quote. He's like, "As I got older, it's like a tea bag that's losing its flavor." You know what I mean? Yeah, and it's just kind of becoming stale. And in that scene, you know, she's explaining to the superhero. He's like at this baseball game. He's like, "This is stupid as fuck. Why am I here? I hate this whole thing." And she's like, "Look at our son right there. A lot of reasons why people have kids and why having a kid is so enjoyable is because we lose sight of what that felt like and what that really, like, how that moved us. Yeah. And when we see these kids experience it for the first time, it stirs that in our brains and reminds us again how that feels. And, you know, and at that moment, as she was describing it, he started watching his son, and his son, like, hit a home run and was running. And he was like, go, go, go. And he started getting into it a little bit. And that being said, it's easier for me now to relate to this, but basically, like, I don't want to take any of those for granted, ever. I don't want to take emotions for granted. Yeah. Now, it's easy to say that now that I'm kind of disassociated from it a little bit, because when you're in it, you're like, fuck me. I fucking hate everything. Yeah. Because it's just so, like, so much. Yeah. And so now to be able to at least think about the gratitude portion of it, and then also being able to channel those emotions is so, like, awesome to me. It's so cool. Like,
no, I totally agree. It's like, when it becomes not so overwhelming, then, and it's almost like when you can take a step back and really be like, wow,
that's life.
Yeah, no, and I think that's also just part of like getting older and like growing and changing. It's like you take a step back and you're like, that's crazy that I did that and that I was like that. But then those, you know, the experience and the thoughts and the feelings are still always going to kind of just live inside of you like forever.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, it's like crazy.
Yeah.
Like we're fucking alive. And I just think that's like amazing.
Yeah. Definitely. So my experience, like when I was doing like the first 3 months of like the activities or whatever, you know what I mean? It was just like, all right, I feel like I'm playing, you know what I mean? Like I'm kind of playing. But then there was this one scene where I had a really good backstory and somebody came to my door and I was just so like emotionally involved in it and doing the whole thing that like I literally felt this anger and like pent up aggression like kind of like well up inside of me, and I was so just like angsty, and the story I created was so personal to me. I didn't even realize how close it was to what I was actually feeling until it started like welling up, and I almost punched Andrew Lodge in the face. I wouldn't have done it, but it was bad. But then after Tony yelled like cut, then it was like, whoa, like that was the first time I actually felt that switch. Yeah. And I was like, wow, like that was real. Like, and I made that happen just in this one instance like that. And it was like, it was beautiful. It was scary because like you said, it's hard to disassociate. Like it stayed with me. Like I have to sit down in like in a theater with these other people right now in this state. You know what I mean? Oh God, it was a lot. And in the same sense, there was a good one too. Like I did my first emotional prep, and it was like a positive one. I came home and I was like overjoyed, and I was also kind of relating to it because it was like I was finally moving on from doors and activities. But I was just like came home and I was like so pumped, and you know somebody famous got my script, and I was talking to him, and I just felt it so much. And then Tony was like, "Yeah, this is good." I'm like, "Don't stop it yet. Like I want to keep living in this."
I know he really just likes to. He puts those on for like 2 minutes and he's like, all right. Yeah. We're done here. And you're like, but I just got to the acting. But it's not acting. It's just living. Right. Just living in reality.
It's just vibing.
Yeah, it's just pure vibes, actually.
Acting is the reality of vibing under imaginary circumstances.
Yeah, you heard it here first, folks. Yeah, I totally agree. 1,000%. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so much fun. It's really fun.
It is fun.
And like you said, I think I think is like a vibe right now. Is that just like having gratitude for it?
Yeah.
Is so important. And so yeah, I think that might be a good place to shut her down before we start sobbing in front of each other.
Great.
Yeah. But I appreciate you coming out here. This was a good conversation. It was a good topic. I was excited
about it.
Thank you
for having me.
Absolutely.
Anyone who's interested in my program, you know where to find me.
At Eva Lin Feindt on Instagram. EVALINFIGHT on Instagram. Also follow me on Instagram. Also, I set up an email if you want to send in any feedback or hate mail. I don't care. It's articulate.
If anyone sends hate mail to Steve, I'm gonna find you and I'm going to sob violently in front of you until you're so uncomfortable that you feel bad and apologize.
That is the most interesting threat that I think I've ever heard in my entire life.
Because people get uncomfortable by violent sobbing girls in front of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
I'll just come up to you screaming and crying, being like, I'm on my period. Don't send my friend hate mail.
That's great. No, so yeah, don't send me hate mail. Well, we'll see how it goes. Or do it if you want to live through that experience.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you want that.
Articulate with Steve McJ at gmail.com. Eva Lin has some movies coming out. Do you want to do any of these plugging things?
Sure. Okay.
Yes. Podcast.
Let's see. I have an upcoming series called Dope Girls, premiering tonight. And possibly on some kind of streaming service in the future. I don't know, but it's called Dope Girls.
Dope Girls, Eva Lin Feindt. Is that what your name on? Just
yes,
like out there
that is
name?
The IMDb credit.
Right, the IMDb. Okay, cool.
And that's all I can talk about right now.
Oh, but there's more.
There's more.
Oh, get excited.
That's all I can say.
Okay. No, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, cool. Well, yeah, thanks again for coming out, and appreciate it. I'll give you a little mic bump. And we're good. All right.